It seems to me that the thread of today has been around mobile working, and in fact IMIS works on that basis. But one of our learnings quite recently was that although we gave staff the chance to work from home, and they did, they're software developers, when it came to very big projects, they worked better when we brought them together. So we do allow them to work in their own environments, but it seemed to be an office environment when we're working on big projects worked much better than being apart and being in disparate locations. It's a comment I would like to make, and perhaps you can let me have your responses. And then I have a direct question to Andy, and that was, in your presentation, it made logical, common sense, but you were stressing about the fact that we would find these points very useful in using today's modern technologies. It struck me that those points were relevant regardless of technology. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I completely agree with that. I think as I was saying actually to the gentleman earlier there, management, leadership, and control and strategy is very much situationally based. And whatever change, and you make the point well there, you realise that you get best out of people sometimes when you bring them together in order to work on something major. And that's a situation you find yourselves in. At other times of the year, you find it better and more beneficial when they work disparately. And the way that you manage that and the way that you lead your organisation suggests that you've taken those lessons fully on board. And so you're adjusting. If you look at those 7 S's, in a way, you're adjusting them continually as you go through to meet the situation that you find. So your structure changes accordingly, but the key behind all of that is the agility, the skills, and the style of your managers and your leaders in your team. And that is where they get their learning and they get their development and they get their skills and the behaviours from, is the point that I was trying to make. Where you can gain very real advantages is if you're using technology as a way to get the very most out of it. If you can take technology and reinforce what you were saying, which is making people better managers, better leaders, more effective teams, fantastic too. But look at technology from both ends. Technology is an enabler to allow people to work, as we've said, mobile and remotely, but technology is an enabler as well to make people work more effectively, more efficiently, whatever environment they find themselves in. But underpinning that, it is the person and it is the manager.
Yes, I think I was concerned with the earlier part of the discussion that you were trying, as a group, to move us down the route where we wouldn't have to meet face to face. And I think there were cases always where being able to see one another does make a difference.
If that point came across from my perspective, that's certainly not what was meant to be delivered. What we've got here is we've got opportunities to simply work a wee bit smarter. It might not suit some companies. I'm sure we can think of a lot of examples where it just simply is not going to apply, and then the traditional business model and methodology of working practice is going to continue. No problem with that. There's lots of benefits and facets to what we hopefully have brought to you today, but ultimately each and every individual company will do what they need to do to make them as efficient. And if that means meeting regularly and not deploying people all over, then so be it. That's absolutely not an issue. We can still deploy the technology that allows them to share all of the criteria.
I don't think there's any disagreement. I was just bringing up the point.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
James. Just a point on that is that email for quite some time inside an organisation has been one of these sort of changes in the way that people communicate. People are far more likely to actually send an email rather than get up and walk over and speak to somebody in the same building or even in the same office. There's a white paper that Microsoft helped create, and I'm sorry to use the hybrid word again, but it's actually called the hybrid organisation. Who would have thunk it? And it talks about how people are looking at the workspace and designing it differently to actually encourage chance meetings of people, to actually stimulate more face-to-face discussion, actually designing the workspace where there are ad hoc places where people can actually sit, have a coffee and actually discuss face-to-face rather than just using technology as a form of communication. Even the move to reduce cost by bringing hot desks actually means that I'm not sitting with the same person all the time. I'm actually meeting other people that can actually help me do my job as well. So, we are aware of the enabling effects that technology can have, but also spending quite a lot of time with some very, very smart people about how we actually also enhance the workspace to actually allow more physical communication and face-to-face communications as well. So, you know, it's really great white paper, a hybrid organisation. If those are things that are on your mind, that is a great thing to take a look at.
Through all this seminar, you've been going on about how fast technology's been moving forward, and that manufacturers every day seem to be bringing out a new mobile phone, and that we find that contracts now are sort of 2-year sort of set contracts. You can't get out of them unless you pay your way out. And my sort of question is what's been done to the customer that's took a phone, you got a 2-year contract, and at the end of that 2 years your phone's ancient, you know, you can't get 50 quid for it on eBay, and what, you know, is done for it in sort of software updates or looking after the end customer.
Well, I can't speak for the competition, but what I can tell you is how CCS deploy and service wrap our clients. And you're quite right, the mobile industry, generally speaking, is now a 2-year contract. However, each and every single one of our clients have the ability to do something at year 1, which allows us, on a 2-year contract, through the first period of term, because you have to remember our service proposition is somewhat different to others, in as much as we actively run your account, we actively look after to see how your usage is going, making sure you're on the right tariffs. We do 6 monthly reviews, quarterly reviews on some of our larger clients to ensure they're getting the maximum service. So when it comes around to month 12, we have the ability then to subsidise additional equipment if we feel we need it. So I can't speak for anyone else, but I do understand your point, because a 2-year contract and 2 years in this industry is light years, as you usually identified. So 12 months, generally speaking, we have technology fund pots that we put into clients. For example, we'll bring a couple of hundred handset account on, and we produce a technology fund for that client. It may well be that a lot of the mobile devices they're presently using, there's nothing wrong with them. You know, the old days it used to be, let's get a new contract because I want a new phone. Do you need the new phone? A lot of the workforce don't. You know, the type of technology we've been talking about today, there is still a lot of companies out there that have people on the road, they simply don't need this technology. So the mobile phones will last them more than a year. So the companies can develop and use that technology fund for the higher users or the more smarter user to purchase handsets accordingly.
Managing the process of, do I need a new device based upon, am I in a position to renew my contract, is going to become an old-fashioned way of looking at the actual decision you've got to make. You know, these are work tools, they're productivity tools. In the smarter world that we're talking about, we're looking to cut cost out of a model by buying fewer servers, by virtualizing more of what you do. But there does actually come a quid pro quo, which is investing in some of the other technology, not necessarily 6 of them, David. I think that could be classed as quite excessive. But investing in the correct kind of technology. Now I would challenge the audience to look at that device that's in your pocket and start to give it a value of the things that it does within your working day, instead of valuing it as if it was a phone that you could call home on to say you're a little bit late. These are work tools, and they've got a place within our IT infrastructure that needs to be invested in.
Bearing in mind some of the concerns people have had about if everyone works remotely, how do we get the team spirit going, how do we manage remote staff, do you yourselves regularly get together as teams, as a management team, as a group of staff that sort of balances that sort of social interaction with remote working?
Yeah, so I think the top of the piece, I said it would only take 5 minutes to describe because it was all so easy, and I think, you know, the technology part is easy. You know, the cloud technologies, you can glue them together, you can integrate them, you can provide a platform that supports this kind of distributed working, and you can do that inexpensively and very quickly. I think the question the gentleman over there made, or the point the gentleman over there made earlier on about this is not a universal panacea, and it's actually in many cases better to bring people together, or more efficient, more effective to bring people together, is absolutely well made. So, you know, our people are distributed around the country. They don't need to be in one place in order to build a system, because the platform they're building on is in the cloud. So, you know, we have most of our projects where you may have somebody in Dallas, somebody in London, and somebody in Gurgaon, and they're all contributing to that project. But nonetheless, there are many times when actually you're at a point in that project where it is vital for them to spend a week in a conference room doing whiteboarding, you know, working on design, or a week on site with the customer, working on the requirements gathering and so on and so forth, and interacting in very much face-to-face mode. But then they don't need to be there the next week because they go away and they're documenting things and they're talking to each other on IM, they're sharing documents in, on a Google Doc platform or whatever it might be. So it's about having the right environment, the right people in the right place to get the job done. But the other point, the other question was about how do we manage that and how do we drive the team spirit? And that does not happen by accident. It is very easy in this environment to end up with 40 people around the country and they all feel like all they're doing is working for themselves. So actually bringing them together, giving them the opportunity to have those face-to-face interactions. So we insist on everybody being in one place for at least a day a month. There is a regular event there. We encourage everybody that can. We have got a couple of hubs that we use. We encourage everybody that we can to get in there at least one day a week. Even if all they do is go in there and do what they might otherwise have done from home, there will be half a dozen of them together. They'll exchange ideas, they'll talk to each other over the water cooler, over a cup of coffee, over a sandwich, whatever it might be. You can't remove that. You can't remove it, and you cannot totally replace it with technology, however effective that may be. So it's the right tool at the right time, in the right place, and blend all of those working environments together, and that, and do that by design. That's what creates a really efficient model.
Across the Atlantic, obviously, they have had mobile working for at least a decade, maybe a little bit more than that. So my questions are first one, are there sociocultural reasons for this? Second, what sort of uptake or adoption have we seen over the last maybe 2 years? Do we have some sort of quantitative measure for that? And where do we see ourselves in 2 to 3 years, 5 years time?
Tim, can you? I can certainly answer your first point from a geographical point of view and cultural point of view. The UK is obviously a much smaller place than in America, so the average commute to the office may only be sort of 30 minutes to an hour, whereas in the States it may be, you could be living different states which are the same size as the whole country. I think what is interesting in these tough economic times is that there's less business around, and so what we found as a small company is that finding business that's on our doorstep, maybe within 30 minutes finding clients, that's disappearing. You've got to go further afield to find relationships. So we've got clients in London, we've got clients in Switzerland, we've got clients in Dubai, and to be totally honest with you, that's only become viable because of some of the mobile technology that's around now. Now, we're not saying that we would completely change everything in the way we work. We're a creative design company. Sometimes nothing beats sitting down with an artist, pad of paper in front of you and a pencil and drawing it out. But we find this a hugely exciting time to actually be working because we think the world is our oyster. I can't really answer it from a sort of a logistics point of view.
There aren't hard facts and numbers that I've got in here. James has probably got some because that's the kind of quality that he's got. But I think that anybody that's ever travelled on a train service in the southeast of England should reflect upon how busy train stations now are on a Friday morning as opposed to on a Thursday morning. And for the obvious work-life reasons, Friday is the most oft-used day to not make that commute into the centre of town. And David, I mean, we live in a very similar area, and we've seen that change, haven't we? Where it's easier to get parked to go through that process. And I would have said that really started in earnest in the southeast of England, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And I will bring the point up, which is that the northeast is not at that stage. So there is a map of the country, and we do see more companies that we're supporting to do mobile working projects based in the southeast of England, because maybe they're more conscious of travelling 6 miles really should not take 40 minutes and so on and so forth. I'm sure there'll be some really great stats out there to be sort of, burrowed into and dug up, but if you want to experience it, just go catch a train on a Thursday morning, then go catch the same train on a Friday. On one day you can't sit down because there's no room, and on the Friday you've got the carriage to yourself.
Thanks very much for coming, and have a safe journey home. Goodbye.